Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and we talk so much about the cashless society, and Canada, according to the Huffington Post, is ready for a cashless society, as the headline says. Cashless Canada? Survey says half of us are ready for it, and this is just an absolute disgrace. We talk about the dangers of a centrally planned cashless system all the time here at WAM, because it is basically the globalist endgame, as the infamous G. Edward Griffin told us not that long ago in an interview. The fact is, Bitcoin is great. Ethereum, Steemit, these platforms are great because they are not centrally planned. They are not controlled by the hand of man. They are controlled by demand. They are controlled by people's interest in it. And that's something that fiat is not part of. The fiat is outside of that realm. Fiat is controlled by debt and further devaluation and inflation and repeat and repeat and repeat. And even worse than fiat is this centrally planned digital currency. If your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's the bank's. And if your money is always going through the banks through digital transactions, it's never yours, it's always the bank's. The banks enslave you. You have no privacy because all of your transactions are being watched, folks. And again, Canada, the Canadian people, they have a habit of making terrible decisions, terrible political decisions, because they are glassy-eyed and happy with the notion of enslavement, except for the few of us that try and stand up and speak as loud as we possibly can here in Canada about how terrible this globalist system is, how terrible this collectivist, communist system is. So, John, go into this further development in this horrible, horrible story.
Well, give me a beer and I'll forget about it.
Yeah, which is what most Canadians, hey, give me a Miller, I'll just sit back.
No,
and, yeah.
Let's get serious here.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, a 2013 study from MasterCard came out that, there was almost 2/3 of Canadians was ready to take away all checks, for example. And that's another move, towards a cashless society. A check is kind of like a promissory note in some form or way. Now, of course, there is a couple of countries ahead of Canada. We have India, which is banned, the $1,500 rupees.
They pulled 86% of their cash and coin in circulation out.
Yeah, and then, of course, Sweden, my good neighbors back home in Sweden there, 98% of all payments in Sweden is cashless. So think about that. It's not cash anymore. They're moving away really rapid and fast. M0 has dropped like a rock in Sweden.
And in the United States as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, the United States has kind of bounced up again. So I don't know really what's going on there.
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say right now. There's, of course, a lot of central bank manipulation going on with M0 and so on.
And the monetary system is far more powerful than any president. So let me make that absolutely clear, that regardless of the president who is in power, the monetary system reigns. The monetary system is far more powerful on a global scale.
I think that's where Trump has the least amount of power, is when it comes to the treasury and the monetary system and, of course, the private-owned Fed. That's where he has the least power. And here in Canada, we do believe that we can go to La La Land and go into this, cashless society and be all happy. Now, the problem with a cashless society is that you lose all your privacy. And of course, Canadians weren't really worried too much about privacy. They said it was, we're willing to give it up if we can get safer, it's all about safety.
It's always about that. Yeah, absolutely. And that's reminiscent of most countries in the world these days, unfortunately, is that they'll give up a little bit of liberty for a little bit of temporary security, and they will get and deserve neither, just as Benjamin Franklin once said.
Well, I'm going to show you a stat here, which is interesting. This shows if they're anxious or excited about the future of innovations and so on. Now, artificially intelligent robotic workforce, 35% of Canadians are very excited about that. Driverless cities and highways. Of course, it's Agenda 21 trying to remove your own control over your own car and being able to travel freely.
Technocracy rising, as Patrick Wood says.
Yeah, that's 37%. Self-driving cars is 41%. Artificially intelligent robots, 41%. And then, of course, e-payments, like the cashless society, 42% of Canadians are excited about it. 50% of Canadians are anxious about what's going to happen. I think they have a right to be very anxious because They don't know what's going to happen with that type of system. Now, Kenneth Rogoff, like, I want to run quickly into what Kenneth Rogoff said about if power outage happened. He said, "Oh, you wouldn't have to worry because the whole technology grid would still run on generators." Now, the problem is, let's say that we get a solar flare, knocks out all the technology. Problem is, even that generator is not going to keep it alive. If it survived, it's only going to keep it alive for a day or two, and then you got to refuel it. But if you have complete panic in the streets because of this, because all this e-currency suddenly have disappeared because, well, we had it all in electronic form, and we don't have access to anything to be able to trade with each other.
Well, I will just say, because I talked with Stephen Kendall about this the other day, there is a case where if a solar flare happened, it could just be temporary if people have the alternative on the free market side of things, the alternative kinds of electronic grids. They have alternative internets, and that's not that bad when it comes down to Bitcoin and stuff like that. The problem is when it's all on one system and there's no way around that system, and of course the markets are being manipulated by the central planners, then it's really hard to get around that.
Well, it all comes down to the grid here in both Canada and the United States is terrible shape. And
back to the 1950s.
Yeah, and if that sulfur happens, you will blast all these centrally controlled e-currencies. They would be destroyed in an instant, and of course electronics and stuff. Now there is ways around that. There's of course people that have put out documentaries talking about it, and I have personally actually built a Faraday cage for fiber optic communication for the Norwegian Secret Service, so I know all what it's about to keep it's safe, and it's possible, but of course the government doesn't care about that. All they care about is having the control with the central currency. It doesn't give a crap if you lose all your money over, let's say, a span of a week. No, because then they just say like, well, it's all gone. Sorry, you know, like it's just a zero now when we restart the system. I'm like, whoops.
Well, and e-transfers aren't that bad if you consider things from the free market angle and not manipulated by government. You see, like at this moment, we have massive manipulation in the markets, massive manipulation in the monetary system, and these things can be answered to, but you have to diversify your portfolio for one. So don't put everything in one basket. And also at the same time as that, with a cashless system, what they are attempting to do is try to create a global currency. The special drawing rights, SDR, at the IMF, they are trying to create a digital global currency. And we know very well how Justin Trudeau here in Canada feels about globalism. He loves it. He's a puppet. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an idiot. He's a village idiot who's being so easily controlled by people, but he's cool, right? He's trendy with pop culture, so people like him. It's insane. And you know what? Even the liberals are getting sick of him, and good for them, because it's getting to a point where everything in Canada is falling into socialism, and soon you know what happens after socialism, John, as it always has historically.
When it comes to Venezuela.
Yeah, as so many communists will tell you, the whole idea of socialism is to build up until it comes crashing down, and then you end up with a communist society. And that's exactly what's going to happen if we don't speak up. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not saying that it's going to happen in a year from now. I'm saying it's going to happen eventually, and if we wait until the last second, we won't be able to do anything about it. So we have to speak out as loud as we can and stop it before it gets way too out of control, and that is exactly what's happening right now.
So I got an idea. You know how you have the Million Mask March and all this stuff, like how millions of people march around the world. Let's do a billion march against cashless society. Let's do that.
I like to see it, but unfortunately, too many people have absolutely no idea of the most basic forms of economics, and they don't even know what central planning is, even though every kind of money, currency that they've ever used has been centrally planned, unless they got some of their grandfather's gold. So let's hope that we start looking towards things like Bitcoin and sound money, gold and silver, and real commodities, things that have value.
Yeah, anything that you use around your house or that has value to you, value to other humans. You know, food and water, of course, is hugely among there. It keeps us surviving. I think it's so important to just get back to that and understand what has value and what doesn't. And what doesn't have value is this fake fiat system that they're forcing us with legal tender laws, and we need to stop it. We need to remove their corrupt system of control.
We have to put an end to the debt pyramid, and the fact is, when they can build up this pyramid extremely high and heavy, then people underneath were holding it up, and it gets heavier and heavier, but they keep building it and building it because that's the nature of fiat currency, and eventually it gets so heavy that we get crushed underneath. And you know what? It all comes down to servitude. You get shoved down that deep hole of debt, as I often talk about in these reports, and you get shoved down that hole, and the only thing that you can do is beg the government and beg the banksters to help you, give you a ladder back up out of that hole, and that's servitude, and that's subservience, and that is enslavement, and that's exactly what they want, and that's exactly why you should stand up to this system and do everything you can to protect yourself, protect your family, and make sure that you are able to insure yourself. I'm not talking about investment, but insure yourself for the inevitable dollar crash, because all fiat currency eventually reverts to its intrinsic value of zero, always has, always will, and this digital system that's centrally planned is no different, and it will be much more hazardous than any fiat currency ever has.
Yeah, no, it's time to remove ourselves from the grid, from the control grid, and become decentralized individuals that could work together and trade together in a free society.
But until then, get yourself prepared, but shut down this insane notion of a digital cashless society that's centrally planned. Do whatever you want with Bitcoin, do whatever you want with cryptocurrencies that are actually crypto, as in hidden and not centrally planned, but stay away from this system. Try your best to stay away from credit cards as much as you can. Don't get yourself into debt, because they thrive off of debt. The top elites thrive off of debt. Do everything you can to protect yourself and your family, and that means more than just sound money and currency. We're talking also food, water, shelter, self-sustainability, and responsibility, because that's what humanity comes down to when it comes to individual liberties. John?
Yeah, and most important, don't get stuck in the modern day breads and circuses.
Absolutely. They distract you and they feed you until there's nothing left to defend any longer, and our civil liberties are gone, and we watch Rome burn as Nero plays his fiddle. So thanks, John, for going into this with us, and we'll be back at you with much more. Check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you folks. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so incredibly demonetized and censored by YouTube. We make our earnings off of YouTube, and when they shut down our earnings, then it's hard to make these videos as frequently as we do. But we do it all with the help of you, the individual, the viewer, and we thank you so much for that. You can also check our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And also check our link to the Red Pill Expo, which takes place June 23rd to 24th in Bozeman, Montana, where you could see people like G. Edward Griffin, Robert Kiyosaki, Lord Moncton, James Corbett, Richard Gage, Cynthia McKinney, Ty Bollinger, Mike Adams, Joel Salatin, so many incredible people. You're going to love it. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change.
Wow.